When you see a bug, how do you react? Are you scared? Disgusted? If your first thought is to run the other way, you're not alone. Humans naturally tend to fear what we don't understand, and there's arguably no group of animals more misunderstood than invertebrates. But if you can look past their creepy exterior, you'll discover some of the most diverse, successful, and fascinating animals ever to exist. And that's exactly what we're going to show you today. My name is Evan, and this is Harrison. We're twin brothers on a mission to make you an insider in the natural world, which starts by showing you how much there is to learn about the wildlife we share our planet with, especially with massively overlooked groups like invertebrates. Inverts are always some of our favorite animals to find because they're so abundant and each one has a unique story to tell. And if it's inverts you want, there are few places in the US better than the Deep South. The expansive forests and swamps of this region are the perfect habitat for all kinds of crazy inverts, and the diversity we encountered while exploring Louisiana and Mississippi was pretty mind-blowing. We knew we couldn't pass up the chance to share these incredible stories with you, and there's no better place to start than with one of our favorite spider species in the country.
Dude, get the jumper.
See bold jump?
Wow.
Bold jump.
Nice. This is cool. All right, there you are. That is a bold jumping spider. Now this is one of the coolest arachnids in this area, one of the larger jumping spiders we get. And I'll see, this is usually, there we go, that's the position that they like to jump from. These animals are incredible at moving through the landscape. They call them jumping spiders because they have that ability to jump better than practically any other spider on the planet. Now I absolutely love these animals because the way that they move is unlike anything else and very different from how we do. Now humans, we move with electrical impulses from our brain that allow our muscles to act, but for these guys, it's entirely different. Their legs, and in fact their whole bodies, are essentially powered by what's called hemolymph. It's a fluid that runs through their bodies, and it's very similar to how a hydraulic piston would work. The fluid builds up and it pushes their legs forward, and it's almost mechanical. That's how our good buddy Spencer likes to describe it. It's almost like they're a little robot. And what's crazy is they're super agile. As you saw, these guys are incredible jumpers. They have exceptional vision, some of the best vision of any spiders, and they need to be able to see well because they have to be able to see where they're going and where they're jumping. These guys are active hunters, often out during the day, and a really, really fun animal to find. The iridescence on their chelicerae is absolutely gorgeous. We'll definitely have to get some shots of that. I love seeing these guys out here.
We often say that the world looks very different for invertebrates than it does for us. But what does that actually mean? We'll never know what it's like to perceive the world through antennae or sensory hairs, but through the incredible eyes of a jumping spider, we can get a rare window into what the world of bugs is actually like. Most spiders have fairly weak vision, and instead interact with the world mainly by sensing vibrations or smelling. But for jumping spiders, sight is their primary sense, and the unique structure of their eyes allows them to see a wide variety of colors and gives them impressively accurate depth perception. However, their eyes don't all work the same way. Only their two adorably large principal eyes can see color and depth, while the other 6 secondary eyes see less detail but give them a nearly 360-degree field of view. This exceptional vision is essential to their acrobatic style of moving and hunting, because when you're the size of a fingernail, the world is crazy. To a jumping spider, every patch of grass is a forest to navigate, every rock and log is a mountain to climb, and every tree is an entire ecosystem to explore. And if dealing with the terrain isn't hard enough, there's a nearly endless array of predators eagerly waiting to make a meal out of them. This is the story for many species of invertebrates. But what do they do when they can't see and move as well as jumping spiders? The answer is often a strong defense, and even the most harmless-looking inverts have some tricks up their sleeves.
Ooh, check this out. We have an American giant millipede hanging out of the... That's hilarious. There's literally 2 of them right
Really?
now. This is great. Now, I'm actually not surprised to see these guys moving because we just had some rain push through. For the most part, these guys are hanging out underground in burrows, but when it rains, they'll come to the surface as they get pushed out from their underground burrows. Take a look at how they move. Their legs kind of undulate as they move forward. They just are so cool looking. And this species is interesting because they're actually poisonous. Now, that would only affect a human if you were to eat one, but they do have some other defense mechanisms. These guys seem pretty chill right now, but if they were threatened, they would curl up into a little ball, pull all those little legs right under their exoskeleton to keep them protected, because that's really where they're most vulnerable. And they can also secrete a pretty foul substance that's really acrid and it can stain your skin brown. That's not actually harmful in any way, but it is very interesting. This is one of the larger millipede species we get here in North America, and I absolutely love these guys. Let's let you get back. It's interesting because despite the fact that they spend so much of their time underground, they're really good climbers. Check this out. Those little legs can latch right onto the bark. And these guys were both moving up the tree here, so we'll let them get back to that. Sweet. American giant millipedes are always fun to see.
At a glance, you might be thinking that a huge, slow-moving sausage with legs would be an easy target for a predator, and you're not wrong. Millipedes aren't fast runners or climbers, so they're not likely to escape a threat that's pursuing them. And because of this, their self-defense really comes down to their poison. Now, in humans, the toxins just cause mild burning and discoloration of the skin and aren't likely to be harmful. But the same is not true for the predators they live alongside. Millipede poison is primarily made up of compounds called quinones, which have a variety of irritating and even dangerous effects depending on what species comes in contact with them. If a mammal, bird, or reptile eats a giant millipede, they first get hit with the poison's horrible taste, followed by significant nausea and stomach pain that teach them never to mess with this myriapod again. The quinones are even more effective against amphibians, as their sensitive skin is especially susceptible to the burning effects of the toxins, which can leach into their bodies through their permeable skin membranes. Where the poison really shines, though, is when it's deployed against other invertebrates, as they are highly sensitive to quinones and can experience severe pain, paralysis, and even death if they ingest too much, because it attacks their cell membranes and disrupts their breathing. To use this defense, the millipedes are able to secrete their poison from glands called ozophores that run along their body, which cover their exoskeleton in the harmful chemicals and make grabbing or biting onto them very dangerous for smaller predators. Millipedes seem innocuous enough, but are actually hiding a toxic secret if you dig a little deeper. And if you were to ask most people in the US about the next species we found, they'd probably tell you that they take this strategy to the extreme, as this creature is said to have one of the most potent venoms of any arachnid. The only way to find out if this is true, though, is to catch one for ourselves. And as it turns out, that did not take long.
So this is super weird. There's a harvestman hanging on a spider web. And this is kind of an interesting opportunity to talk about this. This animal is not a spider. It doesn't produce silk. This is an arachnid. They are distantly related to spiders, but they're much more closely related to mites. And you can kind of tell if you look at his tiny little body and then these huge legs. It's an easy giveaway that this is not a spider. He only has one body segment, no venom at all. Harvestmen, daddy longlegs as they're sometimes called around here, are completely harmless to people. So there's a big myth that goes around that this is actually the most venomous spider in the world and one bite can kill you, but the fangs can't penetrate your skin. None of that is true. No fangs, no venom, but a very, very cool invertebrate. They're actually using their chelicerae, their tiny mouth parts, to pierce into any small insect or invertebrate they can find. But why he was in that spider web, I have no idea. These animals are incredibly misunderstood. A lot of people fear them totally unnecessarily, but there is literally no way that a harvestman can hurt you. But the mosquitoes can, so I'm gonna get him back. All right, buddy. Stay out of spider webs, huh? Yeah, hopefully we didn't just steal a spider's lunch.
Harvestmen, or opiliones as they're known scientifically, are one of the best examples of how little people know about the animals living in their own backyards. You can find harvestmen in every US state, and people encounter them frequently. But despite their complete lack of venom, the urban legend persists that they can take down a human in a single bite. But that raises an interesting question. If they don't have venom, how have they become so successful across the country? The answer lies in their generalist diet and the unique adaptations they have to access it, as harvestmen have an ability that most other arachnids don't. They can bite and chew solid foods. We humans totally take this for granted, but the famous arachnids that you'd think of, like spiders and scorpions, are mostly only able to eat liquid food that they digest externally using their venom. This saves them energy because much of their digestion is done before they eat something, but it does significantly limit what they can eat, as their food has to be able to be liquefied by their venom. Harvestmen are different though, because given their ability to bite solid food, they can not only consume small inverts, but also decaying plants, carrion, fungi, and other foods that are mostly inaccessible to something like a spider. The origins of the harvestman venom myth are unclear, but it perfectly demonstrates how misunderstood so many of our invertebrates are. The next insect we found is one who is often the victim of such misunderstandings, because their intimidating appearance has a very different story behind it than you might imagine.
Look at this guy. Come here, you. He's gonna get away here. That crazy looking animal is a hardwood stump borer. Now these beetles are absolutely incredible. They're part of the wood borer beetle family, the Cerambicidae, and you can see the main tool of the trade there, those incredible jaws. And believe me, if I were to let him latch onto my finger, he would cut straight through. Hardwood stump borer is not a misnomer. This beetle can chew straight through wood, right into even the biggest hardwood trees, and that is definitely an animal that you have to respect. Now, they're not actually harmful to people, but he would definitely tear a hole in my finger if I let him. And the crazy thing about these animals is he's super tough and incredibly strong. They have these really strong hooks on their feet that basically dig into your skin and allow them to climb incredibly effectively. This is a native beetle species. They're not doing significant harm to our native trees. He's evolved with them, so this is definitely an animal we're happy to see, but not one I want to be on the receiving end of a bite from. Very fun to see a large, impressive beetle out here. We'll get this guy back right onto his big hardwood tree here, but that is one crazy insect.
It's all too common for humans to only think about how an animal could hurt them without ever stopping to consider if they actually would. Take the hardwood stump borer, for instance. Sure, their jaws are pretty intimidating if you just think about their raw power, but taking a closer look at their biology reveals that these beetles behave much differently than you'd expect. The funny thing is, they don't really use their jaws for defense or even to eat. In fact, as adults, they barely eat anything at all. Their jaws are essentially just a holdover from their juvenile life stage, when they need to pulverize and eat the wood of the trees they live inside. They do have one important function for adult wood borers though, since male beetles use their jaws to spar with other males when they're competing for territory and mates. This just goes to show how oftentimes the lives of invertebrates are way more complex than we give them credit for, and we have way less to fear from them than we think. There's arguably no species where this is more true than with our next invert find, because they have a reputation that's seriously blown out of proportion.
Velvet ant right here. He's right under this rock, Ev. If you could just grab it right there. This one? Yep, that one. There he goes. Oh, sweet, a little guy. Yep, little velvet ant. Hey. Nice catch. Wow, beautiful. This is a two-spot velvet ant, a lifer for us, a species we've never seen in the wild before. Really gentle animal too, you can see not even an attempt to sting. Velvet ants in general have a really infamous reputation for their painful sting. People think as soon as you see one, they're gonna come after you, try and sting you. As you can see from this guy, that is clearly not the case. She's just being exploratory, moving around my hands. She's probing me with those antennas. That's gonna be one of the main ways that they're interacting with their world. And as long as I'm not putting any pressure on her, I'm not pressing downwards, she's not gonna feel like she's in any danger, and that is why I'm not getting stung.
When people hear that an insect has a very painful sting, that's usually where their interest in learning anything else about it stops. Being concerned with how an animal can hurt you is understandable, but one of the coolest facets of their biology has nothing to do with their sting, but it's a story that's as fascinating as it is totally gruesome.
Now this is a really cool species to see, not only because we get to dispel some myths about a beautiful animal, but because her ecology is very interesting. They're parasitoids. The females will be laying their eggs when she's ready to breed on an insect. Oh wow, she's drinking the sweat, the salt off my hand. There you are, sweetheart. Back into the environment. What a cool insect.
Now, we only talked about it briefly in the field, but parasitoid ecology is actually super interesting, and not gonna lie, downright metal. For context, a parasitoid is an animal that needs to lay its eggs on the body of a host species, and that host provides food for the larvae when they're born. As part of their life cycle, this female will seek out the nest of a burrowing bee or solitary wasp, and sneak into the brood chamber where the baby bees are developing. Then, she'll pick one of the larvae and lay a single egg right on its body before quickly making her escape. Once the velvet ant larva hatches, it will begin to feed on the baby bee while it's still alive, carefully avoiding its vital organs to keep it alive as long as possible. This gives it all the food and time it needs to develop into an adult, after which point it busts out of the nest and wanders off to start the cycle over again. There are actually hundreds of thousands of insect species that have to reproduce this way, and that just goes to show how fascinatingly brutal the insect world is. And speaking of brutal, our next find was a predator renowned for their hunting prowess, but one that we humans actually know very little about.
Yo, real? Yep. Right here. I almost wouldn't have seen it if I weren't just stopping. Check that out. This is one of the coolest mantis species in all of the United States. This is an American grass mantis, actually the first one either of us have ever seen. And what I find amazing about this species, look at the way he holds his arms out like that. He wants us to think that this is just a stick, a little piece of grass. They have immaculate camouflage. It's almost like a stick insect. They blend perfectly into the environment, but there's a big difference. Stick insects are herbivores. These are carnivores. And they're using that camouflage to get right up on top of their prey before they reach out with those long arms up front. They have what's called raptorial arms. They are kind of folded in for the most part, and then they can launch them out super quick. It's one of the ways that a lot of mantises will hunt. They will sit usually on the trunks or on branches of trees, and they'll wait for little insects or other invertebrates to walk by, and then with those amazing raptorial arms, they'll reach out and grab their prey and get a meal in. And they're just such effective hunters. I'm amazed by how tiny those little spikes are. We're gonna need to get our macro lens on it so you can even see. But the fact that something this thin and delicate looking is a predator just absolutely blows my mind. And if you're any kind of small fly or hopefully mosquito, because there are millions of them, this is gonna be the last thing you ever see. Now this species is capable of something pretty crazy. The females basically self-replicate. They clone themselves, literally, so it's our mantis if anything. Right. These are parthenogenic animals. Parthenogenesis is the ability to produce offspring with just your own DNA. This is one animal that we have always wanted to find, so I am super excited.
Annoyingly, we called this girl a male in the field, but the fact that this is an adult-sized mantis that doesn't have wings gives away that this is actually a female, which gives us an excuse to talk about how cool parthenogenesis is. There are actually several mantis species in the US that are known to be able to reproduce parthenogenetically, and this reproduction strategy has a lot of benefits. It ensures that the females can pass on their genes whether they can find a suitable mate or not, and it allows them to establish a viable population of offspring very quickly as a result, even if they're the only individuals around. There are some downsides though, such as reduced genetic diversity that can limit the adaptability of their offspring to changing environmental conditions. Interestingly, aside from their parthenogenetic abilities and the ecological notes we shared, there's not much else known about the American grass mantis, and that's actually the case with way more inverts than you'd think. There are tens of thousands of invertebrate species right here in the US that we either know next to nothing about or that haven't even been discovered by science yet. And it's in large part due to that fact that we find these animals so fascinating. But if you think the invertebrates of the US are impressive, just wait until you see what unbelievable creepy crawlies are living down in the tropics. We spent a whole month down in Ecuador last year filming some of the most bizarre and fascinating creatures we've ever encountered. And if you want to learn about some of the coolest of them that you've probably never heard of before, check out this video, where we explore the tropical dry forest under the cover of night to see what incredible wildlife we can find. And with that, we hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you in the next one.